Hi there, I'm Art by LGO, and I made a drawing of an 1880s striped dress and decided it needed to become a real thing as soon as possible. Here's how I did it. Starting with a lining fabric, an outer fabric, a drawing for inspiration, and pattern pieces, of course. The pattern pieces came from a book called the Historical Pattern Archive. I'd highly recommend this book for anyone who wants to get started with historical clothing, as it makes really easy to draft patterns. Then, after making use of some household objects as pattern weights, I go ahead and cut out a mock-up, which will also serve as our lining once necessary adjustments have been made. Once all the pieces are cut out, I can go ahead and stitch those together so that I can try it on and make adjustments as needed. And there were quite a few adjustments to be made to this pattern. I have a pretty long torso, so that was a bit of a problem, and also I needed to cut the little tail bits off the back and lengthen the sleeves a lot because they were much shorter than they needed to be. I transfer those pattern adjustments onto the tracing paper and then cut them to size. And while I cut down on the bodice pieces, the sleeve pieces needed a lot of addition, so they're kind of Frankensteined together with scotch tape and prayer. Then I realized that the sleeve pattern was not as small as I thought it was. It was too small for me, but it also had lace on the bottom, and that is why it was so exceedingly short in the forearms. Now, having adjusted my pattern, I can begin cutting out the outer fabric, leaving a 1/2 inch of seam allowance, and once again, making use of household objects as pattern weights.
The temperature has officially dropped. It was 16 degrees last night and it is so cold. I'm waiting for the house to heat up. But I do work tonight, so I'm gonna stitch together the bodice outer pieces. Sorry, it's too cold to function. I'm gonna stitch. I'm losing it. I'm going to stitch the bodice pieces together, and then I'm going to go to work and hand sew boning into the lining and then attach the lining and the outer bodice together and then continue on after that.
And after stitching together those bodice pieces, I made my way to work. While at work, I put boning into the lining of the bodice. This was achieved by using zip ties, wrapping them in green ribbon, and then cross-stitching or herringbone stitching them into the lining of the bodice. I also took some of the same green ribbon and used it as a reinforcement strip on either side of the center front opening so that the buttons and buttonholes that will be put on later do not rip through the fabric. Once the lining of the bodice and the outside of the bodice are ready, I go ahead and attach the two together. Then, because I had a little extra time before my shift ended, I went ahead and hemmed up the sleeves with a little felling stitch. I also had enough time to close up the center front of the bodice with the same felling stitch. And while I was at work, I went ahead and refilled my origami butterfly and my take a drawing boards.
I am feeling pretty unmotivated today, but I want to get stuff done. So I'm going to change up the pace. I'm going to hem the collar and the bottom of the bodice, but I'm going to leave the buttons and buttonholes and the standing collar for another day, and I'm going to get started on the skirt today because I need to figure out how much fabric will be needed for each piece of the bustle, and we'll see how that goes. And then I'm going to get started on a new painting because I want to paint today.
Similarly to the cuffs, I go ahead and use a quick felling stitch to close up the hem of the bodice, and I did end up making time to get started on that painting. Then, starting on the skirt, I take a very large rectangle of scrap fabric that I had, and I hem it at the top and bottom, leaving a slit at the top to get it on and off the body. I also had time to clean my machine. It was very satisfying. I got distracted from the skirt and started making the bustle, which is just a very large rectangle and then a semicircle. With boning inserted along channels throughout. And after sewing together the semicircle and the rectangle and inserting the boning into the ribbon channels, I was able to cinch up the sides, add a ribbon at the waist to tie it on, and a real quick DIY bustle was made. Going back to the skirt, I will need 2 ruffles that will go around the entire bottom of the large rectangle we were dealing with earlier. These will be attached to the bottom of the underskirt. Then, taking a very large rectangle of our striped fabric and a slightly smaller rectangle of our striped fabric, I attach those to the waist of the skirt at the front and back. I then realized this skirt needed a waistband, so I whipped up a quick one of those. Then I took a break, went to a concert, met the drummer of Dexter and the Moonrocks. It was pretty cool. I then started the draping process for the front apron and the back bustle of the skirt. This was mostly just done by eye. There weren't exact measurements taken here. I just pleated up the sides of the front apron and hand stitched those into place, and did the same with the back. Also, I wonder why I have back problems.
Technically, there are only 3 things left to do before this dress is finished. I have to slap some... I just stabbed myself on something. Oh, there are scissors in this bag. Nice. Okay, I have to slap some buttons and buttonholes down the front of her. I'm just gonna do the buttonholes by machine because I am lazy. And that's that. Then I need to do the stand collar. This will just be a regular stand collar that's just a rectangular cutout that's curved on the ends and then slapped on the top of this bad boy. And there is one more thing that is entirely superfluous, but I want to do anyway, and that is cover up the back of this, because the pattern matching, like, some places it's fine, and other places it's not. So, I'm back. So I made these tubes of fabric to cover up these lines, and then I'm gonna slap together some little striped florets to go on the base of the bodice, just because I think it's pretty. I'm also gonna make a couple extra to go in my hair when I wear this, or on a hat if I get a hat. Should I get a hat? I might get a hat, we'll see. But I'm going to cover these up, collar, buttons, done.
To make the florets, I start with little tubes of our striped fabric and gather them up, wrong sides facing out along one end. Then it gets turned inside out and the step is repeated on the right side out of the opposite end. They are then pinched together and sewn through. For the collar piece, I found a collar pattern in the same book that I found the pattern for the bodice from. I did most of the work for the collar by hand, as I wanted it to sit just right along my neck. I ended up putting 9 buttons on this bodice and did the buttonholes by machine. And after attaching the floret to the back of the bodice, it's time for the reveal. Another dress done. If I had to have any regrets about this, I think I made it a little too small. It's just not a lot of wiggle room, so it's a kind of stiff dress to exist in. But I'm very happy with how it came out. Working with stripes was definitely a challenge, but I was excited to have done it, and I can't wait for the next project. I'll see you guys next time. I'm Art by LGO. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Patreon. I have a Venmo if you want to donate to my projects, and I hope I see you again. Have a good one.
Okay, yeah. That's really hard to time. This is not loose enough.
On my skirt.
I love it.
This is real weird.
I love it. I wish you could like jump out of a tree.
Hold on. Ready? I jumped out of a tree.
No.
Look at how far up this turtleneck goes.
To make the pain go away. Applesauce. Applesauce.